Okay, so I came across a TikTok by a friendship coach who's made a couple of videos that made their way on my For You page, basically justifying the idea that when she has a conflict with friends, she expects mutual friends to pick her side and to not continue to be associated with people who have hurt her. And I was thinking about this topic and I had a lot of thoughts, a lot of mixed thoughts. And so in this video, I'm going to try to look at this issue from every different angle, as the person experiencing the friendship breakup, as the person being the mutual friend, and as the person who is expected to no longer be associated with other mutual friends. So I'm going to react to the TikTok, view the topic at hand through all these different angles. But moreover, I would love to know what you think about this topic because, as you'll probably see, this is a subject that I think you can look at from a lot of different directions. So my intention with this video is really to just spark a discussion at the end of the day. So jot down in the comments, when you experience a friendship breakup, do you expect mutual friends to pick a side or not? Do you expect your mutual friends to also end the friendship with that person? But first, I have a really exciting announcement today. From August 9th to August 19th, 2024, I decided to include my course, the Connection course, as part of the mental health bundle. Now, usually my course costs $238. It has over 4 hours worth of content in there on the foundational skills for healthy communication, initiating and ending relationships. But with my participation in the mental health bundle for only these 10 days, you get access to the Connection course and also 70 other courses and ebooks on mental health topics and psychology for only $50. The total value of the bundle is $5,635, so that is a 99% discount. This bundle is curated to have only the most useful psychological content created by therapists, mental health experts, wellness coaches. It includes tools on how to conquer anxiety and depression, release stress and trauma, build self-esteem and self-love, foster happiness and resilience, learn the habits that lead to a healthier lifestyle, develop a positive and proactive mindset, and kickstart your healing and personal growth journey. You have courses on emotion regulation, building boundaries, anxiety relief, resilience, productivity, self-love, confidence, sleep, nervous system regulation, breathwork, depression, self-esteem, and many more. So you get over 70 of these resources for just $50 up until August 19th at midnight in New York City. After that, the Connection course and all the other content in the bundle goes back to its original price, and I promise you the course will quite literally never be cheaper than this. I'm really excited to have the Connection course as part of this basically database, an abundant reservoir of psychoeducation, because I understand that the cost of healthcare is out of control. The ability to access information can be very tricky. So I really hope that this targets people at both the prevention and the intervention stage. So if you've ever been interested in the Connection course and all the relationship skills that I have in there, and or if you're interested in the other courses in the bundle, use the link from the description box and in the pinned comment. Now back to the video. So let's take a look at this TikTok. So she posted an initial TikTok and then she posted a few follow-ups. We're going to react to what I think is the original and then one of the follow-ups.
Things that people say, but what they actually mean. But they never did anything to me. This translates to, I am fully aware that they hurt you, but I don't think that I owe you any loyalty, and I'm definitely somebody that is not going to defend you. Therefore, I'm not going to cut ties with this person.
So I'm sure I've been guilty of this in the past, but when we try to read into what people are saying and say, oh, when you say this, what you really mean is this, you're operating under a large amount of assumptions that may or may not always be correct. There's a lot of room for distortions, for your own expectations and beliefs and biases to color the way that you are interpreting what the other person is telling you. If you want to know what somebody means when they say something like, but they never did anything to me, your best shot at figuring out what they actually mean by that is talking to them, having a conversation with them, a back and forth in which you try to gain clarity, not deciding for yourself what they actually mean without giving them a chance to explain. Now, if I were to guess what "but they never did anything to me" means, I would guess that it doesn't mean I don't want to defend you, I don't have loyalty for you, but rather that I'm not willing to isolate people or distance myself from people without good enough reason. And I'm guessing people say that because If you were to cut off ties with every single person that has come into conflict or hurt different people, there would be nobody left to be friends with. But let's carry on.
Therefore, I'm not going to cut ties with this person. Also, somebody hurting you is not a big enough reason for me to cut ties with them, especially if they still benefit me somehow. Continuing to be friends with them is a risk that I'm willing to take even if I lose out in friendship with you, because I benefit from them and their friendship more than I do with our friendship. I know that they hurt you really bad, but it's not a really big enough reason for me to end a relationship and a friendship with that person. I just don't.
Okay, there's a lot of talk about I know that they hurt you, I know that they caused you pain. And what I personally would like to know is, what exactly are we talking about? There is a spectrum of hurt. People can get hurt even from misunderstandings. People can get hurt even from hearing a truth that they don't want to hear. Whereas people can also get hurt from more severe things like abuse and bullying. Most people are not willing to cut off ties with somebody who hasn't done anything to them just because that person had some sort of altercation with another friend. They probably are willing to cut ties with that person if there's been some serious violation of morality or that person's rights that shows this person as not really being a good person or not being a good friend. But what I've noticed is that a lot of times people can distort a conflict to be, this person caused me harm. People find it very easy to paint others as villains and to somehow distort the facts to other people when they're relaying what happened to make it seem like that person did them dirty for something that was in reality a conflict or misunderstanding that both people played a role in. And so that might also be part of the issue, that maybe they don't see the other person as a villain. Maybe from their third eye view of the situation, they consider this to be more of an issue between two people rather than an issue of one person aggravating another.
That person, I just don't care enough that you're hurt. Please understand that a friend to all is a friend to none. That if you've experienced this with a friend that chooses to take the neutral route, understand if you make the choice to keep that friend in your life, know that they will never, ever, ever be loyal to you. Know that they will never, ever, ever be somebody that will defend you in a room where others criticize you.
I just don't think that this is true. I think just because somebody chooses to stay neutral in a conflict between two people that doesn't involve them could go either way. There could be people that choose to stay neutral that will defend you if they hear somebody saying something that's not okay behind your back, and there are probably people that stay neutral and that won't defend you because they're not loyal. I don't think it's fair to conflate these two constructs that are not always found together.
Criticize you. They're most likely going to be that type of friend that will sit there and allow other people to talk badly behind your back and then participate. And even if they do not participate, they're still going to sit there and allow the person to talk badly behind your back. They're not somebody that is going to stand up for you in a room where you're
Not necessarily.
And if you choose to continue to be friends with that person, that is a choice onto you, but do not be disappointed when that person does not defend you or is not loyal towards you. Take their words and their actions as face value, as a thank you for showing me your true colors. Understand those true colors and do not expect more from that person. Set your boundaries, allow them the space, but do not give them too much of your time and too much of your energy, especially if you're someone who's very loyal and really wants friends that are like ride or dies. And you're only going to end up hurting yourself in the long run if you categorize someone like that as your loyal friend, because they will.
So I know people that do consider themselves to be ride or die friends who expect similar absolute loyalty from their own friends. And I gotta tell you, those people don't really have friends anymore, because expecting people to have absolute loyalty towards you is not realistic. And over time, you're going to shed more and more people. This, to me, frankly, does not seem like very good advice. Telling people that they should automatically distance themselves from people who want to stay neutral when they are not involved in a conflict is a recipe for self-isolation.
A loyal friend, because they will never ever actually be loyal to you and they will not defend you ever. I hope this helped, and let me know what else I need to translate. Talk to you guys soon. Bye.
I mean, please don't translate any more things, because translating something from what a person said to what you think they mean is inaccurate and going to cause a lot of misunderstandings. Let's watch the follow-up video that she made.
This friendship non-negotiable that I have has set people off, but honestly, this is my boundary. This is what I choose to live by, and I'm sticking by it.
Obviously, like, you can have your boundaries, you can stick by them. However, I do get the sense this is a little bit of a weaponization of the term boundary, because just because you have a boundary doesn't mean that it's reasonable, doesn't mean that it's exempt from critical examination or from feedback. So by all means, keep your boundary if that's what feels right for you. But I think a lot of people are responding negatively to the original TikTok because there's a lot that could be examined there, and it doesn't seem from the follow-up like that's what we're going to be getting.
By, and I'm sticking by it. I do not associate with people that have done me dirty in the past, and I also do not associate with people that continue to be friends with those people that have hurt me. This has set off a lot of people in the comments. They're like, well, you can't control people and who they hang out with. Babes, I'm not controlling nobody. I'm not telling you who to pick and choose. This is a rule that I live by. Because to me, if it roles were reversed and I watched my...
But the issue is that we are not completely independent people who don't affect each other. The boundaries that you have for yourself do affect other people as well. And yes, your boundaries do to some extent exert control over other people. So if you have a policy of always distancing yourself from friends who are neutral, and you have a friend who sees that, don't you think they're going to feel a little bit of pressure to pick a side, to pick your side, out of fear that you're going to cut them off? Of course, that is a classic case of how a boundary that, while you are entitled to it, may not be completely reasonable and does affect other people's behavior in ways that may or may not be healthy, that may or may not be a little bit controlling. So let's not kid ourselves that our boundaries don't also affect other people and that they just happen in a vacuum.
I live by. Because to me, if it roles were reversed and I watched my friends crying their eyes out, they're in pain, they have fallen into depression, they are just suffering because of how someone treated them, I am not going to go out of my way to hang out with this person.
Okay, well, what she's describing here seems like a case of mistreatment rather than just a conflict or a friendship breakup born of incompatibility. That to me, I think, is reasonable, to expect someone to not continue to be friends with somebody that has seriously caused you harm, that has sent you into a depression, that you've been crying your eyes out for months. That seems reasonable to me. But I think the reason a lot of people were giving her less than favorable feedback in her previous TikTok is because that wasn't clear. It's not clear to us that she's merely talking about the most extreme forms of friendship breakups. Friendship breakups happen all the time. It's not always the most extreme cause. And so I think it's very reasonable for people to be a little bit off-put by that and say, what do you mean I have to cut off everybody that you cut off? Because not all cases are that very extreme end of the spectrum.
They are just suffering because of how someone treated them. I am not going to go out of my way to hang out with this person. To me, it's common sense. To me, I would never hang out with someone that I have seen how their actions have hurt someone very dear to me. This is a standard that I live by. Whether it is right or wrong, I don't know. I know that for me, it feels right. And at the same time, I'm not telling people who they can and can't hang out with. Like, you can do whatever you want. I'm in full belief that you let people do what they want and they will show you what they'd rather do. And then from there, you make your decision of whether you're going to accept it or tolerate it or allow that in your life. So for me, if I was at a table and someone poisoned me, I'm going to leave that table and I'm never going to be sitting at that table ever again. You are free to sit at whatever table you want. But at the same time, there needs to be an understanding that if you choose to sit at a table with someone that you know poisoned me, I don't know what you're doing at that table. And because of my experience, I know that people are not good at communicating. They're not good.
I find this to be a poor analogy because a conflict between two people is not always analogous to one person poisoning the other. There are certain cases, again, where that might be what's happening, like in cases of bullying, in cases of abuse, in cases of one person seriously mistreating another. But in most conflicts, that's not the case. Those are actually pretty rare. In most conflicts, it's important for everybody involved to acknowledge the part that they played in those situations and to not make it seem like the other person is completely responsible for everything that went down and that they are poisoning them, basically. So yeah, if somebody poisoned you at a table and your friend was still sitting at that table, that would be a red flag, but that's not always analogous to what happens when people choose to go through friendship breakups.
I know that people are not good at communicating. They're not good at conflict resolution. They're definitely not good at compartmentalizing between friends. So I know how difficult it is to not say anything and to keep your boundaries straight between two people, especially if those two people are separate. So there's this level of like mistrust between us because now you're sitting at a table with someone that poisoned me. I don't necessarily know what you're doing over there. I don't necessarily know if you're bringing poison back to my table when you're sitting next to me. And this is just like a big ache for me. It makes my skin crawl.
It seems to be like just kind of a slippery slope to say not only I don't want to associate with this person because they've hurt me, but also I don't want to associate with who they associate with, and I don't want to associate with them and them and them. To me, it just becomes more and more unreasonable. You know, with every layer that you distance yourself from the person that actually did you dirty, the more it starts to feel like this attitude of either you're with me or you're against me that I don't think is particularly healthy.
And this is just like a big ache for me. It makes my skin crawl in the fact where like I don't trust you and you're sitting so close to me. So I let you do your thing, but the moment I start getting weird vibes and I start to see that you're acting different and you start to say things that are weird, like you're trying to gossip to me, like I'm just gonna be like, if you're doing that at my table, you're for sure doing that at the poisonous table. So that to me is really just going to put me in a very awkward position, and the trust is not going to be there as strong as it was before. I might keep you in my life, but I might demote you and put you as an acquaintance rather than a close friend, and just set my boundaries with you and keep my distance. I don't think that's a wrong thing. I think that I'm protecting myself from you potentially hurting me because you're associating with someone else like that.
This is an important distinction between somebody showing through their actions and through their words that they're not trustworthy versus somebody having the potential to show through their actions that they're not trustworthy, right? So like if somebody has the potential to cause you harm or the potential to betray you, that to me is not quite a good reason to say I demote you, I don't trust you, I don't think that you're a good friend. Versus if somebody is actually showing through their actions that they're gossiping, that they're acting weird to you, that they're talking about you to the other person, then of course, yeah, like who wouldn't be concerned about that? But I always think it's important to distinguish between potential harm and actual harm caused, because almost anybody can justify something that they choose to do by saying that somebody has the potential to harm them.
You're hurting me because you're associating with someone else like that. And also there's this French saying that I also live by. It's montre-moi qui tu fréquentes et je te dirai qui tu es, which basically means show me who you hang out with and I will tell you who you are. So for me, just the fact that you're associating with someone like that, that just doesn't bode well in my books.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's an expression in English as well. But, let's talk about this because there's a lot to unpack here. Initial reactions, the first thing I want to know is, can we define people that have hurt me? Because like I said, a person is capable of distorting almost anything to sound like the other person caused them harm, even when there were two parties involved and it wasn't a case of one person just abusing the other. What level of hurt are we talking about? Are we talking about a little bit of hurt feelings? Are we talking about somebody didn't handle a conflict well and it was hurtful? Or are we talking about serious harm here? Because there is a spectrum, and I think where the friend breakup falls on that spectrum is relevant to this discussion. Secondly, is there no room for nuance here? Personally, when I think about friends who are stuck in the middle, I want to know, who are they closer with? Who have they been friends with longer? Are they closer with the person doing the friend breakup or with the person receiving the friend breakup? Because I think it's very different to expect somebody to cut off maybe a lifelong childhood friend that they have versus expecting them to cut off somebody that you introduced them to. I think it's a lot more reasonable to expect somebody to cut off somebody that you introduced them to or that they're not that close to. Other questions that I have that I think present room for nuance: do they defend you? Are they showing through their actions that they're trustworthy even if they choose to associate with this person? Also, what about the other side of the story? Because yes, there are two sides to every story. Again, unless we're talking about abuse here or bullying or like serious mistreatment, I want to know both sides of the story before I make up my mind. It's very tricky to just listen to the first person that tells their truth and just take that as their word. Because of primacy effects, we as humans are basically programmed to do that, to just believe the first thing that we hear. But the person that gets the first word in is not always the most trustworthy person. I'm not saying that they're untrustworthy, I'm just saying I don't think there's a correlation. Let's look at this from a couple different perspectives. Perspective one is, like she said, a friend to all is a friend to no one. I think this is somewhat true because it shows that if a person is friendly with everybody, even people who have been shown to be not very moral, not very ethical. And there are people who, through those associations, they are kind of insulting and kind of disrespecting and like, hey, I don't care about the harm that they caused you because, hey, they're cool with me. I do actually have an example of a time when I experienced this. So when I went through a breakup years ago, I had friends who had known my ex the same amount of time that I had known them. They weren't like as close with my ex as they were with me, but they were still, childhood friends. And so when I went through that breakup, I didn't ask people to cut off my ex or to not hang out with him anymore because that didn't feel fair to me. Even though there were people who had seen the circumstances of our breakup from an eyewitness perspective, seen some of the hurt that was caused, let's just put it that way, it didn't seem fair to me to control who this person did or didn't hang out with. Now, there were friends, mutual friends between me and my ex, who I had introduced them to my ex. And so when we broke up, that was a little bit different for me because it was like, you've known this person maybe like 2 months max, and you're not super close with them and you're still continuing to be friends with them, that feels a little bit more shady to me. In fact, there's one person in particular that I'm thinking of who went as far as to almost not invite me to my best friend's birthday party because my ex was going to be there. And my ex and I were fine, we were on speaking terms. There wasn't any hostility there at that point. But when that happened, I remember thinking that my friendship with that mutual friend was probably going to end because that felt really messed up to me. And so in situations like that, I think when we look at the specific circumstances of what happened, you can say a friend to all is a friend to no one, and I don't really want to associate with this person. But again, the ultimate reason why I'm no longer friends with that person isn't because of her association with my ex. It's because of her actions regarding her association with my ex. It's not about the potential of harm, it's about the actual harm that was caused. Now, a different perspective is shunning people who have done nothing wrong to you is a very slippery slope. I have seen and I've experienced what it can do to a person to suddenly be shunned by an entire social group who hasn't even heard their side of the story because they had a conflict with one person and that one person enlisted everybody in their friend group to shun this person, and now this person, every time they go out, experiences glaring, experiences feeling like they don't belong somewhere, feeling like they're not wanted somewhere. That type of social ostracization can be extremely detrimental to a person and honestly dangerous psychologically. And I have known people who are very good at weaponizing their social group in order to isolate people who have done them wrong. And the way that those people have done them wrong is often distorted. And they get in the first word and the other person doesn't get to tell their side of the story. And then that person is forever shunned by an entire social group. And it's very deleterious. And oftentimes those people are the types of friends that expect their friends to be ride or dies, expect absolute loyalty. And it ends up isolating their friends. Because as time goes on and more conflicts accumulate with different people, those mutual friends are expected to cut ties with so many people that it gets to a point where it's really just, I have to be friends with you. and nobody else. Because if I'm friends with any one of these 5 people, shit is gonna hit the fan. And people that have this very ride or die mentality, that expect absolute loyalty from people that really don't owe them that level of loyalty, are often pretty high narcissistic traits and often get in a lot of conflicts. And when they get in a lot of conflicts, that means that their mutual friends have to cut ties with a lot of people. So it is not, the word I keep coming back to is reasonable to expect everybody to take on the same enemies as you, because the web of who's enemies with who is very complicated. And if everybody just cuts off everybody who somebody they're close with has an issue with, they're going to be left with nobody but you. Now, looking at this from every perspective, so as the friend expecting the loyalty, again, I can empathize with, in certain situations, if somebody's done you really dirty, or if somebody is not that close with this person that you've decided to cut ties with, or if they are showing you through their actions that they're not trustworthy because they're friends with both of you because they've chosen to stay neutral. I empathize with that. And with the friend who says, doesn't seem like you're terribly loyal, so I'm not sure I want to stay friends with you. When it comes to the person being shunned, I also empathize with that because, again, it's not fair to feel like a whole group is cutting you off because of something that doesn't even concern them, because of a conflict that you had with one person. And the person put in the middle also has a very difficult situation because it's not easy to watch your friends kind of pulling you from side to side and to feel like you have to pick one or else you lose the other. So everyone in this situation is in a really sticky spot. Here's my sort of decision-making process about all this. When I inadvertently put a friend in the middle by deciding to cut ties with somebody, I would want to consider, who is this mutual friend closer with? Is this mutual friend closer with me, or are they closer with the other person? Because if they know me better, if they've known me a really long time, if we're really close, I think it's more acceptable to demand loyalty from them versus if they have known the other person just as long, they're just as close, or even longer, even closer. Then I think it's completely ridiculous of me to demand that this person cut off somebody that they're closer with. Something else that I want to consider is, what was the reason for the friend breakup? I've done videos on friend breakups before, but by and large, most friend breakups occur because of misunderstandings or because of incompatibilities. Most friend breakups are not caused by the most extreme end of the spectrum. It's ridiculous of me to expect somebody to cut ties with a mutual friend because of an issue that I had with that person, unless, this is where I draw the line, that other person was intentionally cruel to me. That's kind of where my line in the sand is. If this other person was genuinely cruel, I think it's okay to expect the other person to not want to associate with someone like that. And a third question is, do I trust this mutual friend to have my back, to defend me if necessary, to not be manipulated by the other person? If I think that they're a mature person with integrity, then of course I'm okay with them still being friends with other people. And if they're my friend, I would hope that I think that of them. If that's not the case, if I don't think that this person can proceed with discretion and integrity by being friends with both of us, then the reason I don't want to be friends with this person anymore isn't so much about them staying neutral, it's more about their character. As the one in the middle, if I were, put in the middle between two friends, what I would want to know is, again, who am I closer with? In my humble opinion, who was in the wrong? Not that I'm some arbiter of justice, but after hearing both sides of the story, do I get a sense that maybe one side was more in the wrong than the other? Because depending on the circumstances of that, if one person was seriously responsible for causing harm, then I'm much more likely to cut off that person. And also I'd want to know, what does the way this conflict between these two people was handled say about how they're able to show up for me? Because if these two people handled the conflict really terribly, both of them handled it really terribly, I might want to take a step back from both of them or to stay equally close to them. If one person handled this friendship breakup terribly, then it's possible that those same issues are going to show up in our friendship as well. So those are kind of my thoughts at this point in time. I know they're a little bit all over the place, but again, I really want to know what you think about this. And please do not forget to check out the mental health bundle if you want access to the connection course, where I talk about relationships in much more depth than this, and the 70 other resources available. Talk to you soon.